Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Defibrillator drones, chemical straitjackets, and reversing death. Plus this day in history within God We Trust and our Song of the Day by Courtney Barnett on your Morning Monarchy for June 14th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato for MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to wherever in the world you are. I hate when I mess up my intro music. Hope you're doing well. A couple seconds after 9 a.m. We are streaming live, as always, from the Media Monarchy studios up here in Peak, Portland. It is Wednesday, June 14th. Today's Food World Order episode might kind of feel like a Holy Hexes episode. I hope you're doing safe and sound wherever you are. And again, we are brought to you by you. MediaMonarchy.com/support has all the links for the ways that you can give us the support that we need. Independent, non-commercial, alternative media for nearly 12 years. I want to thank again, because I was behind on it, second day in a row, Candide, Susan, Josh, Stefan, Evie, all our latest patrons over on Patreon.com/MediaMonarchy. We've got PayPal.me/MediaMonarchy. The Bitcoin, and of course the post office box. Actually, somebody messaged me yesterday and said, hey, go check your mailbox. I sent you stuff. Haven't had the chance yet, but I will, and a huge thanks. I mean, that's old school. Sending stuff through the mail is nice and classic. If you can give a little, I can give a lot, my friends. Huge thanks to the Truth Seeker app, and also, of course, RadioConfluence.com, who not only rebroadcast some of your Media Monarchy shows, but they also simulcast it as well, which becomes that much more important when you're still having technical difficulties. I am making progress with the server woes, and now the emails are slowly starting to kind of pile up as far as now James Corbett's sending me things. It's like, hey, buddy, people are emailing me because your email's bouncing back. It is bouncing back. James at Media Monarchy right now is bouncing back. So I'll have to rely on the old standby MediaMonarchy.com at Gmail. I've been on with the server people. The work order's in. Some of it's my fault. Some of it is their fault. And I know they could tell I was getting snippy with them yesterday. It's like, I hope this isn't going to be on the bill. Also, yesterday, had a fantastic time meeting up with our friend named Summit. He's passing through town. He's got a tech conference here in Portland, visiting some friends, and even just kind of doing a nice West Coast tour. We had some sizzle pie yesterday, had a couple of pints, and then we sat down to work on helping MediaMonarchy.com, backing everything up, and hopefully once the server woes get straightened out, we're also hopefully going to build our own chat and our own stream. So huge thanks to Summit. He's on the tweets. He's also on the Discord, which is actually what I meant to say. That's where we're doing our chat for the moment. It is encrypted. It is pretty nice. So you can find the links to our Discord chat where we're chatting right now. Huge thanks to Swag. Huge thanks to Courage Sower. Huge thanks to new folks. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Golden Taco Ratio. Welcome to the Discord chat. We're happy each and every one of you are here. Huge thanks. So basically, MediaMonarchy.com/listen live is the best way for you to get the shows. We're putting them up on YouTube. We're putting them up on BitChute. So it's youtube.com/MediaMonarchy, and it's bitchute.com. I believe it's /channels/MediaMonarchy. But if you just go to bitchute.com, we are right there on the front page, which feels nice. So we'll keep on working on everything behind the scenes. I guess it's been basically a week that our work has been disrupted, and as I've said, because the site is still up, everything's still good, I'm not completely freaking out about all of it. I just haven't been able to add new content for over a week now. So if you want to hear your daily DJ set at noon, pump up the volume, you'd have to listen live, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. And we replay your Morning Monarchy at 2 p.m. Pacific Time. Again, it's all at the website. Holy moly, today's Food World Order episode might feel like a dark and dirty Holy Hexes episode. So each day of the week, we focus in on a different area of the news. Monday's world news we call geopolitics. Tuesday is tech, we call cyberspace war. And Wednesday is food, health, and environment news, and we call it Food World Order. And you can find all those stories and so very much more using #Food World Order. The breaking lamestream news ain't exactly lame. And all the speculations about that London high-rise. It's going to collapse, right? Because that's what steel buildings do when they're on fire. The Washington Compost says London high-rise fire was like a horror movie, leaving many dead or missing and dozens injured. At least 6 killed, 70 injured and more. And it's still essentially a developing action going on in London. Meanwhile, other unfortunate developing action on Flag Day, no less. Yes, it is one of our lesser-known U.S. holidays, but it is Flag Day. A gunman unleashed a barrage of gunfire Wednesday at an Alexandria, Virginia park as Republican members of Congress held morning baseball practice, wounding at least 5 people, including House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. The suspected gunman, already caught, James T. Hodgkinson III, 66, from Illinois. According to multiple law enforcement sources, he was wounded in a shootout with the cops and was taken to the hospital. They also included wounding 2 Capitol Police officers and a congressional aide. Scalise's office said the congressman was wounded in the hip and underwent surgery at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. Capitol Police Chief Matthew Verderosa said his officers are in good condition and haven't suffered any life-threatening injuries. So that's what's going on in D.C., and this is all, you think about D.C., and again, we've spent much time in that area. Everything surrounding D.C. is basically Spooktown, USA, McLean, Virginia, all those places. It's all government workers. Various levels of spookdom. So we've already seen from Hodgkinson's social media profile, as is always the case anymore, huge Trump hater, huge Bernie supporter. We unfortunately have said it for many, many, many months now that the violent left is going to have a resurge. And indeed they are. The other breaking news, which is more positive note, and this is more on point with our Food World Order coverage, which we are doing today. Michigan Attorney General Bill Shute today announced that he's charged Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Director Nick Lyon, former Flint Emergency Manager Darnell Early, former City of Flint Water Department Manager Howard Croft, as well as Michigan Department of Environmental Quality's Drinking Water Chief Leanne Schechter-Smith and Water Supervisor Stephen Bush with involuntary manslaughter related to their alleged failure to act in the Flint water crisis. Involuntary manslaughter is punishable by up to 15 years in prison and or a $7,500 fine. In addition to the involuntary manslaughter charges, Shute also charged Lyon with misconduct in office, a felony subject to 5 years in prison and or a $10,000 fine. 5 officials face manslaughter charges over the Flint water crisis. And what did we talk about? There are 100 other Flints all around America. We've got one right here in Portland, Oregon. One of the best reasons of the myriad reasons to filter your water. Holy moly, it's one of the simplest, best things that you can do. I don't rep for Berkey, but we've had one for over a decade. Take a breath. And actually, I joked yesterday, hey, did somebody slip me some caffeine? Today, I actually have had a little smidge of caffeine. I'm a single cat dad this week. Cassie's out of town. She's got business over in Orlando with an AV conference, a little audio-visual conference, which I think I joked yesterday. Maybe it was just in the chat. All kinds of spooks at the AV conference. She was like, oh, now the guy from Boeing is telling us we're going to have commercial space travel really soon. So we're by ourselves this week, so of course it's trying to do double duty and I haven't made it to the grocery store and yada yada, so I was running out of decaf. So I had to use a little bit of calf coffee on top of my regular decaf. So we'll see how it goes during this episode. It is your Food World Order episode. It's Wednesday, June 14th, 2017. I'm still James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. All the stories we are about to talk about have been tweeted, and you can find them on the tweets at Media Monarchy. Each and every day we tweet out the stories we're going to talk about on these shows. So if you're listening live, you can follow the bouncing ball and see the stories. I love being able to transition from one day's topic to the next. The little transition kind of stories. Because it sounds futuristic. Drones carrying heart defibrillators swooping in to help bystanders revive people stricken by cardiac arrest. Researchers tested the idea and found drones arrived at the scene of 18 cardiac arrests within about 5 minutes of launch. That was almost 17 minutes faster on average than ambulances. A big deal for a condition where minutes mean, of course, life or death. Drone-delivered devices weren't used on patients in the preliminary study, but the results are pretty remarkable and proof that the idea is worth exploring, said Dr. Clyde Yancey, former American Heart Association president who was not involved in the study. Cardiac arrest is a leading cause of death worldwide, killing more than 6 million each year. And a little bit later in this episode, we'll talk about some of the reasons why that might kill so many people. Diet. Most happen at home or in other non-medical settings, and most patients don't survive. 90% of people who collapse outside of a hospital don't make it. This is a crisis, and it's time we do something different to address it, said Yancey, cardiology chief at Northwestern University's medical school in Chicagoland. The researchers reached the same conclusion after analyzing cardiac arrest data in Sweden, focusing on towns near Stockholm that don't have enough emergency medical resources to serve summer vacationers. The analysis found an emergency response time of almost 30 minutes and a survival rate of 0, said lead author Andreas Claesson, a researcher at the Center for Resuscitation Science at Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. And we say hello to our friend Sebastian, listening in from Sweden. Huge thanks to everybody listening in all around the world. MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Drones are increasingly being tested or used in a variety of settings, including, of course, to deliver retail goods to consumers in remote areas, searching for lost hikers, and helping the cops watch you. That's not exactly how the Associated Press says it, but you know what they mean. This all sounded insane just a handful of months ago, really. Using them to speed medical care seemed like the next logical step. The study was done last October and was published Tuesday in the Journal of American Medical Association.
From serving up fresh donuts to getting medicine to those in need, drones can offer convenience and access to remote regions. Now a new experimental study suggests speedy drones could help save lives. A report in this week's Journal of the American Medical Association found that drones arrived at the scenes of cardiac arrests almost 17 minutes faster than ambulances. The Swedish study only tested arrival times in a rural setting and not the use of the drone-delivered heart defibrillators.
The notion that a drone equipped with a defibrillator can be dispatched within seconds of a 911 call and then can cut the response time by 2/3 down to a few minutes means everything. Because when we're trying to save a life, it's not time is money, it's time is life.
Dr. Clyde Yancey, chief of cardiology at Northwestern School of Medicine, was not part of the study, but says the concept is worth exploring. He does caution there are other variables involved, including that a bystander needs to know how to use the defibrillator and the patient's condition. Worldwide, cardiac arrest is the leading cause of death, killing more than 6 million people each year. Most happen at home or in other non-medical settings.
And what's more unfortunate is that only about 10% of the people who experience out-of-hospital cardiac arrest recover to be completely functional again. That means 90% of the people who collapse outside of a hospital don't make it.
But a difference of minutes could be measured in lives.
So they could deliver you a Big Mac that will cause cardiac arrest, and then they can just send the defibrillator to fix you. You are listening live to Your Morning Monarchy. It's Wednesday. It's the Food World Order edition of your daily news show, streaming live at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Speaking of non-medical places, a huge article in The New Yorker. Now, I often note, of course, I'm born and raised West Virginia boy. West by God. And I always know that my state is generally going to be at the bottom of any of the best lists and the top of all the worst lists. There is a giant story on The New Yorker. I'll only be able to go into just the first little bit. It's called The Addicts Next Door. Michael Barrett and Jenna Mulligan, emergency paramedics in Berkeley County, West Virginia, recently got a call that sent them to the youth softball field in a tiny town called Hedgesville. Gassy used to live there. It was the first practice of the season for the girls' Little League team, and dusk was descending. Barrett and Mulligan drove past a clubhouse with a blue and yellow sign that read, "Home of the Lady Eagles," and stopped near a scrubby set of bleachers where parents had gathered to watch their daughters bat and field. Two of the parents were lying on the ground, unconscious, several yards apart. As Barrett later recalled, the couple's 13-year-old daughter was sitting behind a chain-link backstop with her teammates who were hugging her and comforting her. The couple's young children, aged 10 and 7, were running back and forth between their parents, screaming, "Wake up, wake up!" When Barrett and Mulligan knelt down to administer Narcan, a drug that reverses heroin overdoses, some of the other parents got angry. "You know what I'm saying? This is bullcrap. Why has my kid got to see this? Just let him lay there." After a few minutes, the couple began to groan as they revived. Adults ushered the younger kids away. From the other side of the backstop, the older kids asked Barrett if the parents had overdosed. It was like, "I'm not going to say. Kids aren't stupid. They know people don't just pass out for no reason. During the chaos, somebody called Child Protective Services. At this stage of the American opioid epidemic, many addicts are collapsing in public, gas stations, restaurant bathrooms, in the aisles of big box stores. Brian Costello, former Army medic, who's the director of the Berkeley County Emergency Medical Services, believes that more overdoses are occurring in this way because users figure that somebody will find them before they die. To people who don't have that addiction, it sounds crazy, but from a healthcare provider standpoint, you say to yourself, no, this is survival to them. They're struggling with using, but not wanting to die. A month after the incident, the couple from the softball field, Angel Dawn Holt, who's 35, and her boyfriend Christopher Schilt, who's 33, were arraigned on felony charges of child neglect. Schilt is not the biological father of Holt's kids. A local newspaper, the Martinsburg Journal, ran an article about the charges, noting that the couple's children, who had been crying when law enforcement arrived, had been turned over to their grandfather. West Virginia has the highest overdose death rate in the country, and heroin has devastated the state's eastern panhandle, which includes Hedgesville and the larger town of Martinsburg. Gassie used to live there. Like the majority of the residents there, nearly all the addicts are white, were born in the area, and have modest incomes. Because they can't be dismissed as outsiders, some locals view them with empathy. Others regard addicts as community embarrassments. Many people in the panhandle have embraced the idea of addiction as a disease, but a vocal cohort dismisses this as a fantasy disseminated by urban liberals. Tensions were aired in online comments that amassed beneath the Martinsburg Journal article. A waitress named Sandy wrote, "Oh my gosh, how sad. Shouldn't be able to have their kids back. Seems the heroin was more important to them than watching their kids have fun, play ball, and have their parents proud of them." A poster named Valerie wrote, "Stop giving them Narcan at the taxpayer's expense." Such views countered by a reader named Diana. "I'm sure the parents didn't get up that morning and say, hey, let's scar the kids for life. I'm sure they wish they could sit through the kids' practice without having to get high." Shaming and judging won't help anybody. So one day, Angel Holt started posting comments. "I don't neglect," she wrote. "Had a bad judgment. I love my kids and my kids love me. They're honor roll students and my oldest son is about to graduate. They play sports, have a rough or whatever they're heading." Oh, good Lord. The spelling is atrocious. And the New Yorker, of course, isn't correcting any of it. Every use of there is T-H-E-R-E, not T-H-E-Y''re. "I don't have to prove shit to none of you, just my children." A few weeks later, the New Yorker spoke to Holt on the phone. "Where it happened was really horrible," she said. "I can't sit here and say different. But if you're an addict, if you have the stuff, you do it." This is right where I'm from. I'm originally from the southern part of West Virginia. But I lived for a decade in the Eastern Panhandle. The Eastern Panhandle used to be one of the wealthiest areas of West Virginia. It felt more like you were in Maryland. And it still does in my college town of Shepherdstown, which is a little tiny town that only has a few thousand people. Once you get outside of that, you go to what we called the Dirty Burg, Martinsburg. We do the same thing here in Portland. You make fun of the outlying cities. Beavertron, the Couve. But yeah, it was the Dirty Burg. And it's only gotten worse. And it's been targeted. It has been targeted by Big Pharma. Easy pickings. Easy pickings. Just like South Central LA was targeted with crack. I see it as essentially the same thing. So we'll include that massive story just like we include everything we say and play in these episodes. If you want to check out that massive story from the New Yorker, the addicts next door. West Virginia has the highest overdose death rate in the country. Locals are fighting to save their neighbors and their towns from destruction. But we can see this throughout. It's not just the parents. It's endemic, and it's coming on down the pyramid. Administrators in Missouri's foster care system failed to monitor and oversee the use of psychotropic drugs on foster children, according to a lawsuit filed by two children's watchdog groups. The complaint argues the drugs were used often to sedate children to control behavior and left them exposed to risk of side effects from diabetes to seizures. The lawsuit, filed this past Monday in the Children's Rights and the National Center for Youth Law in U.S. District Court, argues that 13,000 children moved into foster care over neglect and abuse suffered under the state of Missouri's own neglect of its medication program. The complaint argues that while the drugs can be helpful when part of therapy, Poor oversight meant that some children with behavioral issues linked to the trauma of their abuse or neglect were being given drugs as, quote, chemical straitjackets to control behavior, and the state violated the children's right to be free from harm while in state custody. It seeks a court order for authorities to ensure drugs are safely administered, that medical records are maintained and prescriptions reviewed, and that the children's informed consent is obtained and documented. Lawyer said it was the first statewide federal lawsuit to take sole aim at the issue.
On Monday, 2 youth legal advocacy groups sued Missouri on behalf of 13,000 foster children, arguing that oversight led many of them to be overexposed to psychotropic drugs that carry side effects, including diabetes and seizures. The advocacy group seeks to force Missouri, and as a result other states, to enact stricter measures to guard against overmedication of children in state custody. The Children's Rights and the National Center for Youth Law filed the suit, which is the first statewide federal suit to take sole aim at the issue. Bill Grimm, an attorney with the National Center for Youth Law, said giving a pill to sedate the child or older person is a quicker and easier response than training caregivers and staff to provide non-pharmacological, safer, and in many instances more effective treatment.
So are foster kids all doped up to the gills? It's looking that way. And the argument's even made over in the chat that, oh, you mean these drugs are being used in their exact intended way? As a chemical straitjacket? It's working on the parents. It's working on the kids. God, I know we were even talking in the chat yesterday. Some of you do have kids. You've gone to your schools. And you've seen the huge difference between when we were kids. God, when I was in school, the special ed classes maybe had 4, 5, maybe 6 kids in it. And that was for the whole high school. Now there's entire wings of autistic kids. And we've talked about this. Is it so insane to say, oh, you mean guys like Bill Gates pushing vaccines full of mercury and all the other things? Creating, essentially, armies of autistic kids. Hey, guess what? They've got a place for you to work at the entire autistic wing at Microsoft. This is like a horror movie, and it's not just buildings on fire. It's more like we're on fire inside. Let's continue down the over-medicated road. Because when you hear about prescription drug overdoses, you tend to think about opioid painkillers, just as we discussed a mere few minutes ago. But, as naturalsociety.com reports, you might be surprised to find out that deadly overdoses from anti-anxiety drugs are on the rise, leaving many mental health pros wondering what's causing the increase. A new study published in the American Journal of Public Health shows more Americans are overdosing on common benzodiazepine anti-anxiety medications like your good friends Valium and Xanax. The quantity of prescriptions filled tripled between 1996 and 2013, and the number of overdoses quadrupled during that same time period. Do we file Chris Cornell under this? Dr. Marcus Bachhuber of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York, who helped lead the study, said, overdoses from benzodiazepines have increased at a much faster rate than prescriptions for the drugs, indicating that people have been taking them in a riskier way over time. Each year, more than 5% of U.S. adults fill a benzodiazepine prescription. These highly addictive drugs, which treat anxiety, mood disorders, and insomnia, killed 23,000 people in 2013 alone. When benzodiazepines are abused or combined with other drugs and alcohol, they can depress the respiratory system, sometimes fatally. For the new study, Bachhuber's team looked at large health surveys to find trends in the abuse of benzodiazepines. They wrote, the rate of overdose deaths involving benzos increased more than 4-fold. This rate appeared to plateau after 2010, but between 1996 and 2013, the number of adults filling a benzo prescription increased 67% from 8.1 million to 13.5 million. They also found similarly large increase in the number of pills each person was prescribed. If we're going to address the prescription drug crisis, we can't just focus on opioids. We need to think about more broadly about other drugs, like benzodiazepines. The study's authors warn anti-anxiety drugs are being overprescribed and suggest doctors investigate alternative drugs or treatments, such as even talk therapy. Natural Society reported earlier that public health directors and academics are pressuring the FDA to put a black box warning on benzos. That's the agency's strongest warning because of the drug's addictiveness and the danger posed by combining these drugs with other medications. Now, there are big, disgusting black box warnings on cigarettes as well, but guess what? You have to want to quit. I can tell you this. I'm coming up on 5 years since I quit. It'll be a month away tomorrow, actually. And I know some of you out there as well have quit cigarettes. Now, it may seem insane to compare cigarettes with opioid crisis and benzo overdoses, but it's all very much connected because it all goes to the inside of us. It's like we're being destroyed. So I've got another one that goes along with this from the Vancouver Sun. Health professionals are sounding the alarm over the heightened risk of death linked to use of psychiatric drugs, which was highlighted in a pair of Vancouver-based studies published this month. Benzodiazepine, class of psychiatric medications known as tranquilizers, which can reduce the body's drive to breathe and are used to treat anxiety, sleep disorders, seizures, and other conditions. Of course, they include commonly prescribed drugs such as Valium and Xanax, which were previously mentioned in that Natural Society article, but the Vancouver Sun adds on Ativan. You heard of Ativan lately? That's exactly what Chris Cornell was taking. The headline from the Vancouver Sun, psychiatric drugs killing more users than heroin and cocaine. Who are the real drug dealers? If you know friends on these things, you got to help them. I mean, we've seen friends. You watch them waste away. You can tell it in their sad Instagram posts. It's heartbreaking. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy, Food World Order Edition. That's what we do on Wednesdays. Wednesdays on your morning show, we talk food, health, and environment news. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. I'm a West Virginia boy. I grew up seeing a lot of this, but it was nowhere near this. Glad you're here. We appreciate you. Let's continue to look at food, health, and environment news. An informal meeting about water pollution in Washington County, Minnesota, was swamped with questions for state officials. This goes back 1 week ago. They had a meeting last Tuesday evening. I don't like it, said Bridget Short, holding her baby at the Oakland Junior High School meeting in Lake Elmo. There are a lot of young families around here. About a group of 70 people gathered to learn about the chemicals in their water that were manufactured by the 3M Corporation. Officials have said that the chemicals are particularly worrisome for fetuses, babies, and breastfeeding mothers. Traces of the chemicals, called perfluorochemicals, PFCs, were discovered in the drinking water of about 65,000 Washington County residents in 2004. The chemicals apparently leached into the water from waste dumps where the company disposed of the chemicals, ending back in the 70s. Byproducts from the manufacture of Scotchgard. We have a huge Twin Cities listening contingent. Possibly our biggest concentration of listeners. I love it. I want to come up and visit you guys someday. You know these places. You've seen them. The meeting was hosted by the state's Department of Health and Pollution Control Agency. Until recently, the urgency of PFCs in the water had been fading. 3M stopped making the chemical in 2002, and since then, the levels in fish, river water, and people drinking the water has dropped. But on May 22nd, the health department set a new standard for the pollution. The new pollution, I suppose, which was twice as tough as levels set by federal officials. The new standards meant that city water wells in the area that were considered safe before were now considered dangerous. In Cottage Grove, 8 of the city's 11 wells had PFC levels considered hazardous by new standards. Other cities, including Woodbury, had some city wells that were declared unsafe. All affected cities are now blending the polluted well water with water from clean wells to lower the level of PFCs to acceptable levels. We have acceptable levels of poison. God, that's what George Carlin joked about. Our cigarettes have the lowest tar, the lowest rat dropping and filth than any other leading cigarette. Let alone hot dogs. So just water it down. I didn't serve you diseased meat. I served you non-diseased meat from a diseased cow. Everybody does it, Krusty the Clown said. The article title on TwinCities.com, Water Drinking Public Worried or Not About 3M Pollution. Sometimes people are worried, sometimes they're not. And as we've talked so many times, so many of these things are avoidable. They are actually avoidable. If you believe it or not, most of the ways we're dying in America are completely avoidable. Or at least could have been, would have been. Further proof for that? Consumers should consider going organic because pesticides on food are far more dangerous than was thought, causing damage to the human brain, a major study suggests. The research published by the European Parliament warns of the very high costs of current levels of exposure to pesticides, especially for the aforementioned kids and pregnant women. It could result in new limits on pesticide levels or changes to labeling of foodstuffs under EU law, which require the UK to review its policies by next year. The landmark study suggests that the damage caused by pesticides across the EU amounts to at least £125 billion a year based on the loss of lifetime income from such damage. The report warns of increasing evidence that residues from insecticides are damaging the brain and reducing the IQ of the population. And it raises concerns that the chemicals could also cause cancer and damage to your reproductive ... That's where the paywall comes down on Telegraph. But we know this. This is further documentation. Hey, guess what? Newsflash, you guys. Stop the presses. Pesticides aren't good for you. Are you worried? Do you have anxiety about poison in your water? Here, have some benzodiazepines. Oh, is your diet bad because you're eating garbage? Here's a pill. Food and Water Watch are trying to get the names of some poultry companies. Briefly, Food and Water Watch, who did yeoman's work here in Portland. We're one of the only major cities in America that have staved off adding fluoride to the water. Actually talked about this a little bit last night with our friend Summit. Say what you want. Fluoride isn't really meant to be poured down your gullet. If you want it to help your teeth, you put it on your teeth. Not in a glass of water, which goes past your teeth and straight down your belly. So Food and Water Watch did fantastic work, and they've got offices here in Oregon, and we've worked with them on some other things when we were back in the March Against Monsanto days. And I think in a lot of ways, this is even what Cassie said late, it's like, I think we might be post-political now. While everybody's out wearing their costumes for the fake left and the fake right. It's more about what's in your fridge. The revolution starts in your medicine cabinet, which should be your refrigerator. Food and Water Watch has filed a suit against the USDA. Oh, who's heading the USDA? Oh, that's right. The former governor of Georgia and all his insider connections. Food and Water Watch has filed suit against the USDA because the agency will not release the names of companies that have applied to switch to a voluntary program that allows for non-government poultry inspections. Basically, they want to find out what companies are going to be able to hire their own people to inspect their places. Our own investigative team investigated ourselves, and we found ourselves to be completely innocent. That's how that's going to go. So we'll try and follow up on that story and see if we can find what places Food and Water Watch are looking for. And now it's time for your weekly update on the pink slime trial, my friends. ABC strikes back by churning up BPI's earlier history. The meatpacker has the heavy burden of proof in this $1.9 billion defamation case against ABC News.
In a South Dakota courtroom this week, Beef Products, Inc. argued that a series of 2012 reports by ABC News' Jim Avila defamed their chief product, which the company calls lean, finely textured beef, but critics have termed pink slime. In his reports, Avila used the term pink slime 137 times to describe the substance, which results when beef trimmings are placed in a centrifuge to separate lean meat from fat, and then treated with ammonia to kill E. coli and other bacteria. BPI has called the reports false and defamatory and claimed that they nearly destroyed the business. The company claimed it lost 80% of its revenues and was forced to close 3 of its 4 processing plants. Attorneys for ABC News have defended the coverage as accurate and protected under the First Amendment.
Yummonia. So last Thursday was for sparring between the defense attorney and the beef safety professor. there was a sort of dividing line in time. Brashears kept returning to the LFTB product approved with its beef label in September 93 as it existed in 2012 and since. Brashears works for the beef place. But Swinkus is defending ABC. He used most of his cross-examination to get into BPI's earlier history. The defense attorney asked the witnesses numerous questions about BPI's pre-1993 product, which was called partially defatted chopped beef. It was not permitted in ground beef. BPI petitioned for a reclassification to allow the product to be included in ground beef and to change its name in April 1990. But Swinkus wanted Brashears to acknowledge that at least 3 scientists at USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service opposed the BPI petition. She did, but only after talking about how the nonprofit, non-governmental National Academy panel approved it. The two went at it about whether the trimmings were used by BPI for its LFTB product, which are 70% fat, also more dangerous than lean trimmings used by other beef processors. At one point in time, the Food Safety Inspection System was on the record saying there was increased danger with LFTB, pink slime. Brashears, however, testified that she did her own study on the issue and found the theory did not hold up. That sounds like what we were just talking about. Well, I investigated myself and I found that I'm good. But Swinkus did get the professor to admit BPI was suspended from the National School Lunch Program. On multiple occasions, back in 07 and 08, Brashears said those suspensions were essentially voluntary actions by BPI taken after pathogens were discovered in its products in the lab working for the lunch program. But Swinkus produced a notice sent out by FSIS after BPI won its reclassification request for the product formerly known as partially defatted chopped beef, that the action was only a name change. Brashears said the notice was neither official nor complete. She also said she didn't agree with some prominent meat scientists but Swinkus quoted. Those scientists said LFTB substance is like coupe, an ice cream sherbet dessert, with a consistency like mashed potatoes. So we're getting these updates from Food Safety News, which every time they're running an article about the pink slime trial, they have to note at the bottom. Attorney Bill Marler, publisher of FoodSafetyNews.com, represented retired USDA scientists Gerald Zernstein and Carl Custer until they were dismissed as defendants in the case. The bottom line on this case is the bottom line. This is about millions and millions and millions, and yes, $1.9 billion defamation case against Disney. My gut says there's no way this is going to fly. This gets into what are referred to as food libel laws. If this does fly, if ABC is found guilty, it's going to be massive changes, and it's going to be a huge win for the food world order. These are those difficult situations where it's like, fuck, I have to choose between whether I want to defend Disney or BPI. That's the technical definition of a dilemma. A dilemma are two choices that neither of which you want. Last few stories here on your Food World Order headlines, and it eases our way into the Holy Hexes themes, because Mickey D's is getting into the gay pride spirit, so says the, appropriately enough, San Francisco Guardian. The fast food franchise is serving its signature fries in cheerful rainbow-colored boxes at participating locations throughout the greater California Bay Area, as well as some District of Criminals locations. McDonald's has always been a company that has supported diversity and inclusion of its employees and extended McDonald's family. McDonald's spokesperson Kim Knapp said in a statement, "We're proud to create an inclusive culture where everyone feels valued, appreciated, and supported." As an official sponsor of this year's Pride festivities, we look for a unique way to bring that celebration into our restaurants throughout the greater Bay Area. McDonald's introduces gay pride fries in rainbow boxes. Heart attacks for gays, as is noted in the chat. Yeah, no, you guys don't have to push and shove. Everybody will have a chance to be pandered and gouged. So yeah, while you're having your gay fries heart attack, you can phone up the defibrillator and it'll fly in and help you out. Oh my God. Would you like diabetes with your rights? Final couple of stories here really do indeed feel more holy hexes. And that's what your Thursday episodes of your Morning Monarchy are. Those are the dark and disturbing, occult, chaotic chaos. Yes, chaotic chaos. Are they dead yet? Experts come together to define the exact moment we die. And only two things in life are certain, says the London Independent: death and taxes. Hashtag taxation is theft, or so we thought. For while it might be everyone's ultimate fate, establishing whether someone has actually ceased to be is a source of some uncertainty, according to world-leading experts on the subject. Now they are gathering for the what is that word? Euro Anesthesia Congress in Geneva in the hopes of coming up with a once-and-for-all answer. I thought it was going to say Euro euthanasia. Different cultures around the world define death in different ways. In modern medicine, the concept of brain death, or death by neurological criteria, known as DNC, that's fun, was introduced 40 years ago, but doctors have different ideas of what this means. This is where you insert the jokes about, oh, hey, yeah, those Democrats, they're all brain dead. Professor Giuseppe Citerio, an expert in anesthesia. Anesthesia, I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Anesthesia. All right, what's that mean? Let's look it up quickly. In the practice of medicine, especially surgery and dentistry, anesthesia or anesthesia is a state of temporarily induced loss of sensation or awareness. Okay, that's the same word. I thought I was missing or jumbling up some letters. Many of the controversies that surround the determination of death by the DNC have not been settled, and this meeting presents an opportunity for future research and education to clarify outstanding issues in order to reduce professional and public disquiet. So is the question being discussed here? So when we have giant farms of jiggly, fat, unhealthy people hooked up to the Matrix, they're not technically dead, they're alive, and we just keep them in our facility. What could possibly go right? Because there's not one, there are two companies not only working on figuring out when you're dead, but also trying to reverse it. BioQuark is about to begin a trial that will attempt to bring brain-dead patients back to life using stem cells. However, the trial is raising numerous scientific and ethical questions for some other experts in the field. Researchers seem to be setting their sights on increasingly lofty goals when it comes to the human body, from the world's first human head transplant to fighting aging, and now reversing death altogether. A company called BioQuark hopes to bring people who have been declared clinically brain dead back to life. The Philly-based biotech company is expected to start on the project later this year.
Could clinically brain-dead people actually be brought back to life one day? That's the question being addressed by two biotech companies, US-based BioQuark and India-based Revita Life Sciences, who were approved for a clinical trial to study human brain deaths. Popular Science is reporting that the team is in search of 20 clinically dead individuals to receive stem cells, nerve stimulation, and other treatments. A press release about the research notes that other animals, such as some fish and amphibians, can repair, regenerate, and remodel substantial portions of their brain and brain stem even after critical life-threatening trauma. The piece also points out that death has become a somewhat ambiguous state. Although it is often measured by brain activity, the body can still retain functionality. Results from this trial in India could be available by next year.
A company called BioQuark wants to do the unthinkable. Later this year, they want to begin their project to raise the dead. I bet you have a lot of questions, the main one being, how is this even possible or even ethical? Science, my friends. Science. The plan is to enroll 20 patients who will undergo various treatments. Firstly, a stem cell injection. The stem cells will come from the patient's own blood or fat. After that, the protein blend gets injected directly into the spinal cord, which will create the growth of new neurons. After that, for 15 days, there will be laser therapy and nerve stimulation. This will kind of jumpstart the neurons so they can make connections with each other. While all of this is happening, the researchers will monitor the behavior and the treatment. Okay, so now that you know that it's kind of maybe possible, How is it ethical? Obviously, a procedure like this is really controversial. It was actually supposed to go forward in India in 2016, but regulators wouldn't allow it to take place. The electrical stimulation of the median nerve has been tested, but there's not a lot of evidence to back up the procedure. Most of it is in the form of case studies. According to Dr. Ed Cooper, this technique has limited success in some patients in comas. But a patient in a coma and a patient that's brain dead are completely different. The main issue with this is consent. How can a dead person agree to this procedure? Even if the consent situation is sorted out, no one knows what these people will be like when they wake up, if they wake up. They could wake up and be the same person as before, but what if they aren't? What if they have brain damage, or worse, what if they really do turn into this zombie person? Many experts don't believe the experiment will work. According to one doctor, the technique relies on there being a functional brainstem. If there's no functional brainstem, then it can't work. But how do we know if we never try? Imagine if one day science will allow us to have life after death. I think it's something worth looking into.
Where did you get this? The alternative media, Jerry. That's where you hear the truth.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
I was like, oh my God, that's your Food World Order headlines. That's all the food, health, and environment news that sounds pretty dark and disturbing. And yes, that does sound like a movie you've seen before, which, of course, they will be rebooting and remaking, as we've already reported to you in recent months. Flatliners. Coming soon to a megaplex near you. Now, I appreciate not only your help in getting me these news stories, but also in following up on these stories. We don't want to feel like we just sort of do this in a vacuum and don't follow up on anything. Following up and getting the context and the subtext is a huge part of all of this. That's a pretty disturbing look at food, health, and environment news, my friends. And again, all those headlines you can find on the tweets ahead of time. And then, of course, when we publish these episodes, and especially once we get our server fixed and start to upload our episodes again to our own website, everything we say and play always included in the show notes. I have a very Food World Order-y song, brand new music from Courtney Barnett. It's called How to Boil an Egg. How Food World Order is that? That's coming up in just a few minutes. But first, we take a stroll down this day in history. June 14th, 1789, HMS Bounty mutiny survivors, including Captain William Bligh and 18 others, reached Timor after a nearly 4,600-mile journey in an open boat, a.k.a. Mutiny on the Bounty. 1789 on this day. Jumping ahead a century and a half, June 14th, 1937, Pennsylvania becomes the first and only state of the United States to celebrate Flag Day as officially as a state holiday. That same day, 1937, U.S. House of Representatives pass the Marijuana Tax Act, and that's where you just have to have this tax stamp to grow marijuana. Okay, cool. Could I get a stamp? No, we don't make them. We're just trying to keep you from smoking that dirty Mexican weed and maybe listening to jazz and hanging out with people of a different color than you. Devil weed. June 14th, 1949, Albert II, rhesus monkey, rides a V-2 rocket to an altitude of 83 miles, thereby becoming first monkey in space. June 14th, 1951, UNIVAC 1 is dedicated by the U.S. Census Bureau. And June 14th, 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signs a bill into law that places the words "under God" into the United States Pledge of Allegiance.
There are a lot of controversies surrounding American currency, like whose image should appear on it. Are there hidden messages embedded within them? And of course, the inclusion of these 4 words. In God We Trust has been on some form of American currency since 1864. U.S. coins started featuring the phrase in response to increased religious sentiment during the horrors of the Civil War. During that time, letters poured into the Treasury Secretary's office trying to draw attention to the importance of recognizing God on the currency. War was also responsible for the phrase appearing on paper money nearly a century later. But this time, it wasn't meant to help calm a panicked nation. Instead, it was used as a symbolic weapon against the threat of communism. The Cold War was a time of tense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, where many in the U.S. felt that democracy was threatened by communism, leading to the Red Scare.
Most thinking Americans now recognize the fact that our country is at war.
It was a time where communism and communists were enemy number 1. and everything they believed in was inherently un-American. And one big thing the communists didn't believe in? Religion.
As a creature not of God, but of the state.
So, in retaliation to Soviet godlessness, Washington, D.C. became a new beacon of religiousness. A prayer room was installed in the Capitol building, newly baptized President Eisenhower began attending the prayer breakfast, and the words "under God" were added to the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954 after a joint resolution was passed by Congress. And then, in 1956, the official motto of the United States was changed from E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, to In God We Trust. And that motto was legally obliged to be on all money, both coin and paper. They were grand gestures to separate the United States from the Soviet Union. In fact, Florida Representative Charles Bennett, who introduced the legislation that put In God We Trust on all American currency, gave a speech on the House floor saying, "In these days when imperialistic and materialistic communism seeks to attack and destroy freedom, we should continually look for ways to strengthen the foundation of our freedom. So, when you reach in your pocket and pull out that U.S. bill, remember that In God We Trust is on there as a constant reminder that America is not the Cold War era, atheist, communist Soviet Union."
As above, so below. Now, I know they were talking mostly about stamps, but it's all related. On this day, 1954, Ike signed a bill that placed the words "under God" into the pledge. Now, remember to do the Bellamy salute. You know, like the Heil Hitler thing. That's the way you're supposed to salute the flag. Good God, I'm even glancing at breaking news right now. A minute ago from the Associated Press, San Francisco police report shooting at UPS warehouse. And we'll get into this tomorrow. And a little bit Friday. What about the plays being done in the park in Central Park? We are being sold murder and mayhem, and everybody's lapping it up, loving it, and asking for seconds. Don't take part. Don't get freaked out and angry. That's how they win. They want you to fight back. That's the only way they know how to deal with you, is when you get violent. It's pretty simple. Editorial sidebar. Let's get back to this day in history. June 14th, 1959, the Disneyland monorail system, the first daily operating monorail system in the Western Hemisphere, opens to the public in this day in Anaheim. 1962, the European Space Research Organization is established in Paris, later becoming the European Space Agency. June 14th, 1966, the Vatican announces the abolition of the Index Librorum Prohibitorium, the Index of Prohibited Books, which was originally instituted a couple years back in 1557. June 14th, 1967, China tests its first hydrogen bomb. 1979, a No Nukes concert took place at the Hollywood Bowl in L.A. on this day. Acts included Bruce, Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Browne, Stephen Stills, and yes, many, many other military intelligence-connected kids who all lived in Laurel Canyon. June 14th, 1980, the terrible movie Roadie, starring Meatloaf, debuted on this day. You should check it out. It is worth watching if you're a media geek. June 14th, 1986, the Mindbender derails and kills 3 riders at Galaxyland Amusement Park. June 14th, 1988, the Fat Boys file a $5 million lawsuit against Miller Beer and Joe Piscopo for using their likeness in a Miller Lite Rappin' Fats Piscopo commercial. It's one of the strangest This Day in History notes I think I've ever made. June 14th, 1994, the 1994 Vancouver Stanley Cup riot occurs after the New York Rangers win the Stanley Cup from Vancouver, causing an estimated $1.1 million damage, including 200 arrests and injuries. Now, I thought this was possibly related to OJ. I had to double check when I was doing the prep. It's actually June 17th, so that's coming up this Saturday, so we won't actually be on the air. That is a fascinating day, and it sounds strange coming from me, I know. ESPN did an amazing documentary as part of their 30 for 30 documentary series when they were celebrating their anniversary, and it's just called June 17th, 1994. An amazing confluence of sports events all happened on one day. And it was basketball championships, and it was Arnold Palmer playing his last professional golf game, and it was this, and it was that. All the while, OJ and the Bronco. It is a fantastic documentary that uses no talking heads or any of that. It's just news footage. Published to my own website a decade ago today, banksters plan to build tower at Ground Zero. JP Morgan Chase announced they had struck a deal to build a skyscraper near Ground Zero. We think about that as we were watching the buildings burn in the UK. June 14th, 2007 on MediaMonarchy.com, FBI terror watch list is out of control, as reported by Disney, ABC. We had Ron Paul on the Colbert Report, and a documentary called Good Copy, Bad Copy. So that's another documentary I'll recommend for you. It's even got music by Danger Mouse, Girl Talk, and more. Celebrating birthdays today, June 14th, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Burl Ives, and wouldn't you know it, Argentinian-Cuban physician, author, guerrilla leader, and politician Ernesto Che Guevara, born on this day in 1928, and his spirit survives when you shoot little kids and people at a softball game on Flag Day. It's Marla Gibbs' birthday. Junior Walker, Joe Arpaio, Steny Hoyer, Rod Argent of the Zombies. We were just talking about him. It's also King Diamond's birthday. Maxi Jazz from Faithless. It's also Pamela Geller, Boy George, Steffi Graf, MC Ren from NWA, and film writer, director, producer, screenwriter, Diablo Cody. All those people celebrating birthdays today. But let's quickly move to our song of the day as we wrap up your Food World Order episode. A long time ago, Courtney Barnett would play How to Boil an Egg at open mics in her native Australia before making it big, but she never recorded it. While she was hunkered down recording demos for her upcoming new album, she decided to experiment with one of the first songs she ever wrote, and she updated it for inclusion on a split singles club release. We're going to go out with How to Boil an Egg by Courtney Barnett, a very Food World Order way to wrap up your Food World Order episode for Wednesday, June 14th, 2017. Again, I'll remind you we're having server woes. You can get the episodes on YouTube and on BitChute, and they will be coming out soon. And again, we stream them all and replay them live right here, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. It is all brought to you by you, my friends. A huge thanks. I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for listening and reminding you, as always, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
I don't sleep for days. Wait until the letter's read, until my bills get paid. Tell me, when's it gonna change? Tell me, when's it gonna change? Every morning I feel more useless than before, trying hard to see the point in anything at all. Oh, I've been trying really hard. Yeah, I've been trying really hard. Pull yourself together, pick myself apart. Nothing lasts forever, so be still my bleeding heart. Oh, I've been dreaming of a brand new start. Yeah, I've been dreaming of a brand new start. You have a great abundance of axes there to grind. Remember, some people have
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology, and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.